You are listening to the Eskimo Empire Podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
I think Booty will do a great job. Looking forward to seeing him on Friday at the stadium.
I was going to say, I'm going to see him at the game. Hey,
boy. Oh, yeah, I'll see him. We all call him Booty.
You can. Yeah, I think I'll say Mr. Commissioner. Yeah. That's all right. Yeah. Maybe Mr. Booty Commissioner.
Mr. Booty. Mr. Booty works for me.
Welcome to the Empire. It's the Eskimo Empire Podcast.
Here's Mike Riley, takes the drop, waits and throws, and he's going deep downfield. And Darius Bowman. Oh my goodness, what a catch by Darius Bowman. You won't see many better than that. Franklin to Zylstra, touchdown Eskimos. Pressure's coming. Oh, Levi Mitchell goes down. There's a big play for the defense. Somersaults for everybody.
Welcome back to the Turf District for episode 98 of the Eskimo Empire Podcast, brought to you by Provincial Sleep Group. Visit psgi.ca and take your sleep quiz today. I am your host, Andrew. Thank you for downloading and having a listen. Make sure you do the same for all the great Canadian Football Pod Network shows. We have lots on this show for you, as we will cover the week that was in the CFL, including that big literally last-minute win for the Esks, another Eskimo history segment, our pick'ems for this week, and the return of an amazing alumni guest. But first, joining me as always on the ones and twos, as they say, it's Superfan Mike.
I prefer on the 2 and 4, but
all right, fine. You could be 2 and 4. That's
there we
fine.
go.
Yeah, all right. How's things, man?
It's been good.
Good. We watched the game together last week.
We did.
You
got to see the dance at the end.
I was going to say you witnessed the Andrew overly excited dance at the end, so that's good.
It makes the Carlton pale in comparison.
It really does. Yeah, it was a lot of running and flailing. I think that's really what it was.
What's your move?
Oh, I know, but it's what I do best. That's why I never played football.
That's why
I do not run and flail so well. Then, of course, we were over at Jedi's for a barbecue on the weekend, and I finally got to meet Supermom.
You did. You met Supermom Sue,
which was fantastic. A nice little hangout there, and I thought that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a great day for sure, and the weather just cooperated so beautifully.
Yeah, right in the middle of 2 kind of crappy days. It was a little so that was amazing. Now, we talked about it on the Periscope, but our Kwaku t-shirt pre-order is now up and ready to go.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it already, just go to the @EskEmpirePod Twitter account or the Facebook page. You can take a look at the shirts, see what you think. They're $15 for a dry fit shirt. Absolutely fantastic price with the logo screened on there. I think it's a great deal.
Yeah, exactly. $15, can't beat it for a dry fit.
No.
But this time we are taking pre-orders, so you do have to pay for the shirt up front, and then we'll order them all in, and then we'll get them all for you guys. Plan is to order on August the 8th, so get that in before then, your size and your money, and we're ready to go.
Good to go.
I'm excited to get one. I can't wait to have one for myself. It's going to be very exciting. So, all right, let's get right to our guest, shall we?
Yes, please.
Yes. So making his return to the Turf District, you probably know him best as number 43 on the Eskimos,
or
maybe 76, but I know him as 43. It is Mr. Jed Roberts. Thank you for coming back.
Hey, thanks for having me. I just have this visual of you dancing to "It's Not Unusual."
You know what? That's not far off.
No.
Yeah, I think you got it pretty close, actually. Yeah. Oh, we were having. Yeah, I was so. In that fourth quarter, I was having such a hard time, and then it's like he caught that, and all I could be like, "Hey, Sultan!" I was like just dancing around the room. I was so excited.
If I had a video going at that exact moment,
I know. Yeah, if you
would be broke.
You
with
think
that
the
Brian.
singing Patreon? Quite possibly. How's the summer been so far?
Summer's been good. Like I said earlier, I haven't been coaching, so it's been wide open. I've been spending a lot of time with the family. We've been doing lots of stuff. We're going to go to the K-Days here next Saturday. Mm-hmm. Got it set up. We're going to go in the morning and try to last all the way up until the fireworks. We'll see if that happens. Because we're going to hit the barbecue pretty hard. I might actually crash after that. But, the boys are excited. So, I mean, they're at that age where everything's new and fresh. And so it's really cool to see it through their eyes.
Very good. We were lucky enough, of course, to watch the last game with you right in the alumni suite. Now,
amazing.
I loved your play analysis, right? The play would happen. You say, oh, now watch this. Is this what that guy did this? And watch this over here. and that type of thing. But have you ever thought of going into like broadcasting or something?
Well, you know what's
play-by-play?
funny you
Like,
say
it's
that
awesome.
because I think I posted it on sfans.com about having done some dry runs with Jason Rager about 10 years
nice.
ago. Yeah, and I did some color with him, and yeah, I thought about it, but nothing really ever presented itself. So, but
Yeah.
it's fun. Like my wife gets really. She says, you know what? Like you're not playing anymore, but man, game day is tough in our house because you're like we're gonna be late. Like and then I'm like. That's probably the fastest I walk. There's no other time in my life. And on game day, I'm walking really fast. I'm not limping anymore. I'm like, there's a spring in my step. So, I mean, there's definitely a passion for it. And if something like that were ever to materialize, I'd probably take a hard look at it. But because of the way the offenses are designed up here with the unlimited motion, the motion is like, it's like a smoke screen, right? Like it's not where they line up. It's where they end up when the ball snapped. And so that's something you have to train your brain to do, like to take your eyes to where they end up, not where they're beginning. Like, because CFL is really good for that. Like, it'll draw your eye away, like all the waggle motion with the receivers and the backs, and the only one really sitting still are the linemen and the quarterback, right? Everybody else is just kind of. So it's tough to watch the game, especially if you haven't been watching it for very long. Mm-hmm. But if you've seen it for a long time, I spent thousands of hours of film and watching, studying, and that sort of thing. So it's just you see things, you just kind of. No, you know what I mean? And then you kind of feel for like what they're doing. I know a couple of times when we were watching the game, I said, he's going to throw this route. Like, and sure enough, boom. Like and you just look at them, you can kind of sense the matchups and who they're going after and who they're picking on. And that's why this year's version of the Eskimos are so exciting because they have those receivers where if there's a matchup, you're dead. They're all equally good. Like all 4 receivers or 5 receivers that they have out there can hurt you bad. Like even Watson, who's really only primarily used as a blocker, he won the game. So you can't sleep on any of them. And people I think are starting to figure that out. The 4-0 record's not a fluke. They're really, and they're just kind of plugging and playing guys. And it's attributed to the work they did in the off season to bring these guys in from all over North America and Canada. They've got guys. The guys that are on the practice roster are ready to go. Yeah. They've just been plugging guys in. Like, who was this guy? I mean, a guy like Parrish, who's an outside linebacker who, I played with his dad when he was in the early 90s. And he's good. And he's a DB, but he plays as a linebacker, and he can cover a guy man-to-man. Like, there's no problem. Like, he can run a 4.5. So, I mean, people don't realize that. Like, that the Eskimos did their homework on these guys that they brought in, and they're ready to go. And it's just nice to see the progression of the club, where they came from, say, 2012.
13,
when things weren't looking so great personnel-wise, and now we've got this top quality, probably the best Canadians in the league right now. This receiving core is pretty exciting to watch, and it's like they keep taking turns, and it's not all Bowman anymore. It's like, they're spreading it around, and I like the fact that they have mixed up their playbook in a way that you just can't really hang your hat on anything. They could bring something out. They're going to look at who they're playing, and they're going to tailor whatever they do to whatever they see. And I like the no-huddle concept is really good because you're putting defenses back on their heels. We talked about the fact if you got their defensive players on their hands on their hip, that's when you know you got them.
Yeah, exactly.
And, there's 20 seconds between plays, which is bad enough, but when you're getting the ball off at 10, in a no huddle, that's not fair. Defenses just can't, especially if you're moving the ball 12, 15 yards at a clip, right? So, this game in particular, this last one, I was pretty sure they were going to lose it because Hamilton's a tough place to play at the best of times.
Yep.
And, they lost a couple guys to injury, and they shocked me by winning the way they did. But, it really is a testament to Riley's ability to lead this team. And he's just got this fire in his eye right now that's just, wow. It's almost as if he realizes he's got a guy backing him up that could start.
Almost.
You think? Yeah, you think? Yeah.
So you've also done some great assessments on your Facebook account too. We've been friends on Facebook for quite a while. Recently, you were talking about how you would make officiating better. Yeah. Do you want to maybe elaborate a little bit on that on her?
Well, I talked about the fact that they don't pay the officials very much.
No.
And some people kind of countered that. Well, they don't really pay. The NFL was, I think the median pay for the NFL officials right now is $150. Just better than most
I could live
of
on
guys
that.
Here. That's US dollars. That's not monopoly money.
That's right. Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah.
the other thing too, and it's not a full-time job for the NFL officials either, right? Like a lot of those guys are, doing other things, but they give them training and they do all this other stuff. But the pay right now, I know for a fact, I'm not going to say out publicly how much I think they make, but I bet I wouldn't be far off. But Bud Steen and I have spent a lot of time together, and we've talked about that, about how they have to give up their holidays just to be able to do their job, and they don't have any time with their families, and a lot of you have to throw them a bone, and I know that with the new commissioner, the collective bargaining is coming in. I think they have to work that in somehow. That's got to be addressed into the game. I know the players are different from what the officials are doing, but that's something that, they need to talk about that because, you're losing. That's a big part of the game. But I do believe the pay needs to be addressed. Sure. I do believe they need to, because I think if you do that, you'll draw from a bigger pool. And
I think they do need to continue to work on the training.
If you're paying guys part-time wages, you're going to get part-time results. Yeah. That's just the way I look at it.
Yeah, it's not. You're absolutely right.
I mean, we're lucky to have guys like Bud Steen. Like Bud's a lawyer. He's very smart, very bright. Him and Jake Ireland, as bad as that call was in the Grey Cup in '96, was easily one of the best refs in the league, and he's a working professional as well. And these guys, they come back because they love the game. They're not getting rich, They're just doing it because they want the game to do well, and they don't go out there intentionally try to blow calls. No. A lot of people, there's a conspiracy. No, there's not. Or everybody wants the Riders to win. No, they don't. They play the games.
We really don't.
They really don't.
Yeah, believe me, nobody wants the Riders to win. Okay.
You had it in '66. Now shut up.
Yeah,
exactly. Now, and speaking of you just talked about the new collective bargaining agreement, all those types of things that are coming, but. What I find interesting, actually, because with the new commissioner being Randy Ambrosi, and you played with him.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts of him in the new position?
Randy's a very bright guy, right man at the right time. He couldn't have come along at a better time. With the collective bargaining coming up, it's surprising to me that they allowed a former player to come in and be the commissioner and
players rep too.
Yeah, and so the last couple of commissioners have been paperweights, really. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the collective bargaining and see where Randy's sympathies lie in that whole situation. I have to think that he'll be pretty sympathetic because he was a player rep and he was on that CFLPA. But now that he's been in the world of business, he understands that at the end of the day, if it's not making money, it's not profitable, you can't run it. You know what I mean? So
you got to find that middle ground.
You've got to have a team in Toronto. You can't survive without a team. You can say what you want about how much that bothers you, that there's nobody in the stands, but if there's no team in Toronto, there's no CFL.
The advertising alone.
So many people don't understand that.
Yeah.
That if you don't have a team in Toronto, we're dead. There won't be a league because all the money that comes out of Toronto, you just can't survive without it.
Yeah.
So I think Randy's got his work cut out for him. I think that if anybody could do it, it's him because I know him from playing with him. He's very smart, very quick, analytical, level-headed, not an emotional guy. I remember when we won the Grey Cup in '93 and his brother came in. And I don't know if anybody knows anybody else, outside of that dressing room that year remembers, but Randy blew his knee out that year.
Yep.
And then he came back halfway through the year. We weren't expecting to see him again. It was a pretty bad injury. Well, they basically just braced him up and said, you need surgery, but if you can tolerate it, you can play. And so he braced it up halfway through the year. I think it was after Labor Day, and he finished the year out. And then we won the Grey Cup, and his brother came in, and they just hugged each other and cried in the locker because at that time I didn't realize he was going to retire. I was like, man, this is if he hadn't come back, the season may have gone differently, right? Because Randy was so good. He had one of the strongest grips I've ever seen. Once he got his hands on you were done, And
really,
his nickname is Booty because he's got a rather prodigious backside. But very good sense of humor, a good guy, but cares very deeply about the league. And I think that he, above anything else, because he has that player background, he really understands more than anyone else that's probably ever held that job, the nuances around what the league needs, particularly right now, in order to be able to survive. The TV money is great, but they've really got to get those things addressed. The Toronto's got to be stabilized. Hamilton maybe to some degree.
Sure.
Once they can do that, then you can start talking about expansion. But they need to get the collective bargaining and all that before they can even think about adding a 10th team. So I think I think Booty will do a great job. Looking forward to seeing him on Friday at the stadium.
I was going to say, I'm going to see him at the game. Hey,
boy. I'll see him. We all call him Booty.
You can. Yeah, I think I'll say Mr. Commissioner. Yeah. That's all right. Maybe Mr. Booty Commissioner.
Mr. Booty.
Mr. Booty works for me.
Professor Booty. I love that. I was reading recently, your first game. So you were with the Winnipeg at training camp in 90. You joined the Eskimos in September of that year, and you got in because you were replacing an injured Eskimo on special teams. It was Randy Ambrosi. Yeah, so...
Weird.
Wow, that's man.
Weird how it comes full circle.
Comes
Right?
full
No
circle.
kidding.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
So speaking of our former teammates, something we thought we would try, we tried last week, and I think it went really well. Maybe doing a little bit of word association. I think with you, were you the ultimate person to do this with? Just mention the name of some of the guys you played with, and just give a thought, whether it's 1 or 2 words or 100.
We'll try to keep it PG.
Yeah, exactly.
do whatever you want.
We got a filter. So, all right, let's start with, how about the Grinch, Benny Goods?
Benny was when he got going in one direction, there was nothing you could do about it, and he was like, you want to talk about booty? Benny went to the next level.
Nice.
Like that booty was straight up like we're talking custom fit seat.
Oh,
Like he had to get like an extra insert put into his jeans, man, just to like make it work for him. But
especially those acid wash
and
jeans.
Benny
in the
was
picture.
really, really funny, like very funny guy, but almost always at someone else's expense.
Right.
Like he would, and he would beat a guy in 1-on-1, and he would just go, and then walk back to the huddle every time, and that would just drive the old lineman crazy. But there's nothing they can do about it, you know. I don't know if you remember Fred Childress.
Yep.
Yes.
The only reason he came into the league was because of Benny Goods, because there was nobody that could block him. He was a 3 technique, and when he got going, it was it. Like he just went straight, and there was nobody ever put him on his back ever.
Wow.
Ever. Yeah, he was unbelievable. He was
definitely
strong.
a favorite.
Great, as good a first step as anybody I've ever seen. And he was into you before you could even do anything. You know, and that's with the 1 yards too. So he was pretty fun to watch.
Awesome.
And it was crazy, especially that Grey Cup year in '93 when he and I were playing together, because we both came in as linebackers. I don't know if you guys know that, but he was playing. He went to the New York Jets, and he was a late cut. And he and I came in right almost the same day. We had rooms right next to each other at Chateau Lacombe, and we would go out together. We became really good buddies. We became really good friends. But his style was completely like almost the opposite of mine. Like whereas he would overpower guys, I would make people think and then give them different. So I mean, he had 14 sacks, and I had 10. So the 24 sacks out of that one spot
in one season.
So when you think about that, like that's pretty crazy. But that was largely due in part to like Stubler's system, where he would have Benny set up at the 3, and then after about 2 series, he put me in, and those guys would be ready for somebody to like bull rush them, and then and I'd be in the backfield, right? So Benny was fun to play with.
That's awesome. All right, well, let's talk about someone that you know, I think, fairly well, not only from your playing days, but also teaching football 101, Glenn Harper.
Harp and I used to sit together in special teams meetings, and we had these things that we used to say. Like Mark Nelson, our special teams coach back then when we were winning that Grey Cup in '93, he had this accent that he sort of acquired from his time in Oklahoma, because his dad was Roger Nelson, who's on the Wall of Honor there. And so Mark was like me, spent half his life in the States and half his life in Canada. And so he had this American accent where whenever he would say especially, he'd say especially. And he had this deep, like, lone wolf McQuaid voice,
does
right?
have that, yeah.
It's like, especially. So every time he'd say especially, we would cross our fingers. Especially. And then he'd look over and we'd be like, what's up, coach? But yeah, Glenn was a lot of fun. Glenn's a great golfer, scratch golfer.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think he's got a handy guy. He's quite good. Very funny, great with like impressions. Like he can do.
Nice.
I can't do the ones he does. Big time Alice Cooper fan. Golf with Alice Cooper. Does a lot of stuff with him at his tournament down in Arizona every year. Just a really all around nice man. Like his kids kind of grew up with my kids.
Right.
You know? Yeah. Just a good guy. I'm looking forward to seeing him tomorrow. He's pretty funny.
Me too.
Yeah, he is. He's awesome. Yeah.
Let's go for a guy that did pretty well on the defensive side of the ball and the linebacker spot, Willie Pless.
Willie, you know what? People don't realize this about Willie, but Willie can sing.
Really?
He can sing quite well. Yeah, gospel, beautiful voice. Very, like, just he could be on no problem. He could be on American Idol, and he would probably do quite well. Great voice, great singing voice. I spent a lot of time with Willie in the off season. Like we used to go camping up in Jasper, and he taught me a lot about barbecuing. He's the one who taught me about using a water bottle when you cooking with chicken. Yeah,
right.
And he's really. We used to go fishing together. Sometimes people had trouble with Willie because they couldn't really figure him out. And I just never looked at him as a puzzle to be solved. I just kind of just hung out with him and spent time with him. And I wasn't trying to, like if he wanted to talk, he could talk. If he didn't, I mean, I'm deaf anyway, so I can hear half of what he says, right? So. But we would sit out in the boat and go fishing and just share space, and he was a good guy. I really enjoyed. I had as much fun with him off the field as I did on. And I know when he played, if you look at the pictures really carefully, like especially toward the end of his career in the cold weather games, he wore ropers, yellow ropers that he got from the cowboy shop at the West Edmonton Mall. I don't know, Lamley's or Wayne's.
Probably Lamley's, yeah. Yep.
I saw these ropers. I'm like, why are you using ropers? And he's like, well, if ropers can use them then why can't I? And I'm like, well, okay, I see your logic.
Yeah.
I'll see your logic. I'll do you one up. I said, so I grabbed the markers and I put the logo of the gloves that we're using at that point in time, like colored it in, detailed it and everything. So I actually drew up the logos on his gloves. And if you look in the pictures, you can actually see the red and the black. And
Really?
And actually wrote it all in, yeah. So you couldn't tell, but they're actually ropers.
Really?
It's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Very cool. All right, let's go one more. Someone that came in your second year, and I would imagine had a probably big influence, the coach, Ron Lancaster.
Ronnie was a guy, I was actually thinking about him today. My dad spoke very highly of Ronnie, and I met Ronnie when I was in my last year of high school, going into my first year of university. We were at a quarterbacks club luncheon, I think, and he was the speaker, and I listened to him speak, and then my dad introduced me to him, and I was starstruck because my dad was like, he passed for over 50,000 yards.
Yeah.
That's a pro football record, and I was trying to picture him playing quarterback because he just didn't look like the type of guy that. And my dad was like, trust me, that guy, he wanted to beat you. Like if there was any way he could beat you, he was going to try to figure out a way to beat you. And when my dad found out that he was going to be the coach, my dad said he's going to do a really good job. And that went against a lot of the pundits on the media. They were like, well, you know what, when he was coaching in Saskatchewan before, he was terrible. But my dad was like, look who he had to work with. There was nobody there, right? They were all too old, and they kind of they didn't even set him up to succeed. They kind of set him up to fail. And so they kind of ran him out of Regina on a rail. And I remember he was really pretty bitter about that. I remember he wouldn't really ever talk about it, but you could tell when we went back to Regina, he was always a little bit more keyed up than he was usually. He used to chain smoke like crazy at halftime and after games. Straight shooter. If you want to know how you were doing, just ask him. He'll tell you. He wouldn't mince words. He wasn't one for sparing feelings, right? I respected him immensely. And when they left for Hamilton, I was really sad, and I understood why, because they had family back in Ontario and they wanted to be closer to the east. But I really missed Ronnie. He was the guy that I respected him immensely. It was kind of weird because we went from him to Kay Stevenson, who wanted to put in a sprinkler system that only we knew about when we formed our huddles. Well, that's a long story. He thought that water was the most important thing in football. And he wanted to design a sprinkler system that only we knew, that we could form huddles over and that we could get water secretly without the other team knowing. To go from Ronnie to that was, and then they brought Don, who was, Don Matthews, who was kind of like the Al Pacino character in Any Given Sunday. Right. And it was like, okay, all right, we get it. You're intense. But I liked him. I liked Donnie, but he was just a different speed. I was used to Ronnie. Ronnie had so much integrity and so much.
Yeah.
Not that Don didn't, but Don was a different guy. Don related to his players on a way that Ron would never do. Ron wasn't a guy that was trying to get down there and, do dances like you would do if you were at Sean John concert. You're really going to miss out on that concert this week.
Yeah, it's true. It's very sad.
But you would never see Ron Lancaster dancing in the pit to a Sean John concert like Mike would be.
That's right.
Don Matthews would dance in a pit with Sean John, but Ron Lancaster would not.
And that tells us everything we needed to know.
How about me too?
Exactly.
So there you go.
Exactly. One more here, because I don't think we got to ask you this last time, but if we try to ask all of our alumni, what does the Eskimo way mean to you?
Yeah. Eskimo way means showing up early and leaving late and getting everything done you need to get done, and then taking care of business. And when it's time to play, it's time to play. There's no room for guys that you go around the teams, and I can tell by the way guys walk on the field what their teams are like. The Eskimos finally have that culture back that they were missing. From 2007, I can trace it right down to Milt Stiegel's catch.
Yeah,
06,
all the way to when Ed came in as GM. That's when I call that the dark ages. As far as I'm concerned, those years don't exist because we had guys that were more comfortable with playing the role than actually playing the game. They wanted to be able to put that uniform on and then get numbers from girls, and that was it. That was pretty much it. And they were like, yeah, they might show up half the time, and they were happy with being 500 and maybe making the playoffs once in a while. And that's not Eskimo way. That's not the Eskimo way. It was hard to watch. It was hard to see that. In 98, when I tore my Achilles in training camp.
Yeah.
I didn't, now that I'm older, I realize it was really dumb, but I just couldn't picture myself not playing. So I played on a torn Achilles for half the year.
Wow.
I had to freeze it up.
Cow.
I had to freeze an Achilles tendon so I could play on it. I don't know.
God.
Like that, and that's the logic, but that's how I wanted to play so bad. Like, I wanted to help the team. I didn't want to be, and it killed me not to be out there, and I wanted to be, and it frustrated me because I couldn't play at a level where I felt like I could help the team, right? So I was like constantly trying to come back too soon, and I don't want to see a guy like Bowman do that, where if you're hurt, just take the time, right? So if I could give my younger self advice, I would give myself that advice. But when you're in the middle of it, and it's like you got a guy sitting on a chair with the locker that has no name on it, staring at you, that plays the same position as you, waiting for you to get hurt. It's tough, right?
Yeah.
And that's the Eskimo culture. When you've got guys as good as you, if maybe not better, just don't have the experience, waiting for you to screw up.
Yeah.
That's when you've got. But the other thing I'll say, the last thing I'll say about the Eskimo way is about teaching the younger guys how to do it. Because when I came in 1990, I was a linebacker. And then I came into training camp in 91. They moved me to D-line. I'd never played D-line in my life.
Yeah.
So I wasn't very happy. I was newly married, and I had a baby on the way, and I haven't told this story very often. And I wasn't sure, when they told me to play defensive line, if I was going to make it. Because I'd never played the position. We had Brett the Toaster Williams. We had Mike Walker. We had Michelle Bourgeau. We had Stu Hill. We had Benny Goods. We had some really good defensive linemen.
Yeah.
Okay. I never saw any reps. Like I was in meetings, and then the first preseason game, they didn't give me any. I didn't play, and so we had 3 games that year, and I didn't play the first 2 games. And then the third game, they gave me 1 series, and they let me play all the special teams. And I went crazy on special teams, and that's actually what got me on the team. But the 1 series I got in on, I learned some stuff from Mike Walker, who taught me how to spin. And I didn't know how to do any of that, so he was like trying to teach me. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, well, just do this, And he taught me, and that's the Eskimo way, and not being like an information hoarder and like being selfish and not, you know what I mean? Like, well, if I teach you, you might take my job, or you know what?
Right.
Like that's out of your control. Like whether or not you get the job or not really is not up to whether you tell this guy. That's more detrimental in the end than it is to be a team guy. And sometimes being a team guy might come at the expense of playing time, right?
Yeah.
So, because I ended up, and Brett Williams wouldn't teach me anything because he knew I was playing his same position, and he wasn't really a great team guy. I ended up taking his job.
Yeah.
And Mike Walker lost his job to Benny. So the Eskimo way is about helping the other guy out, and the Eskimo way is about going above and beyond. And realizing that this is a community-owned team, and that the city will embrace you if you give as much as you can to the community. Because at the end of the day, the community owns the team.
Yeah.
And the kids that are in the stands, their parents, their parents came watching when they were kids, right?
Yeah.
And it's handed down from generation. A lot of the season tickets are handed down from generation to generation.
Absolutely.
And the Woodward's Knothole gang, the Safeway end zone, all that stuff, the Safeway seal, all that. That's all, Nanook, all of that stuff over the years. That's all part of it, right? And I think a lot of guys miss that, and I think too a lot of the Americans are staying now.
Yeah,
and that was a big one, and it was tough because when Machocha was here, he kept cutting guys, and he kept cutting the guys that were the glue guys, and there wasn't anybody stepping in because the guys that they had were just coming in for 6 months and leaving. You didn't have the AJ Gasses, the Singo Mobleys, the guys that stayed here all year round. The Shannon Garretts,
Yeah.
And now you've got those guys that stay here all year. And there's something to be said for that. Like the team that breaks bread together, wins together, right?
Yeah.
So those guys just show up for 5 months out of the year. It's very difficult to expect that kind of continuity and that kind of a culture.
Wow, that is fantastic. And I knew you were going to have an amazing answer to that, so that's amazing. All right, well let's get into our game from last week a little bit. So, of course, the hot topic is the last drive. 71 seconds on the board. 75-yard drive. I actually got a couple of clips from Morley to put right in here.
Starts. Riley waits for the ball now. Settles in the pocket and throws over the top to Zylstra inside the 15. And the Eskimos are knocking on the door. Down by 5. Riley takes the snap, throws, and it's not complete. It's complete to the 5. Touchdown, Eskimos! Vidal Hazelton wrestled the football away from the DB, turns and takes it to the end zone, and the Eskimos will take the lead.
So, of course, that means the Esks win 31-28. Give us your thoughts on the game in general.
I thought that Hamilton did a good job in the game, especially on their defensive front, and then they were giving the O-line some trouble. I felt like Sorensen and the guards weren't in sync. So there was something that Hamilton was doing that was throwing. I don't know if it was like, I can't speak to it. Like, I'm not in the room, so I can't talk about that. I mean, it could have been something as innocuous as a scheme thing, right? All I know is that Ted Laurent had 3 sacks and 2 of them were gifts, where Justin just didn't have his eyes right around him. Yeah. So, and it wasn't really actually Justin's fault. It was more just like he didn't know, and so Ted just took advantage of it. So it wasn't like Ted overpowered anybody. He did on the one. Like, he made a nice clean move on Simeon, but there were a couple where the guy just went the wrong way, and Ted just kind of went in there. And I felt like for them to overcome that and win the game, that's the type of thing that really brings a team together, because if you have the W and you're going over the film, it's a lot easier to teach somebody than if you've got, think about the Hamilton dressing room where they're 0-5 or whatever, right? And it's very difficult when you've got that kind of pressure on you. And I always say is, when you win those early season games, it makes things so much easier later down the road, because every team goes through a spate of injuries. It just happens this year. Eskimos are going through it early,
Yeah,
and
still
lost,
winning somehow.
If you would have told me before the year, you'll be 4-0, but you won't have John White, you won't have JC, and you won't have Bowman, right? And Greenwood's out for the year, you know what I mean? And Konar will be too. I would have said, there's no way. Yeah. There's no way you can win without those guys. Like, those guys are glue guys in the dressing room, right? So just the fact that, they're doing things this year that I haven't seen, where they're coming back from adversity and they're not making excuses. They're just going out and they're shutting their mouths and they're playing. Like, they're not talking about it in the paper. They're just like, well, it's another game.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike, we were talking about on that night, that has to have been the hardest hitting game we've seen all season.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a team playing for its life.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you said that as well.
That's why I didn't think they were going to
Don't underestimate it, right?
I think that was interesting that I saw the Ken Austin interview after the game, and he said, we knew that with the defensive halfback going out from injury and they had to shuffle things around, they were going to attack that spot.
Yeah, and they did.
And even knowing that they were going to attack that spot, they couldn't do anything about it.
And then that comes back to the physical nature of those receivers, right? I mean, you can, that kind of goes back to, like, if you throw a jump ball to Hazelton, 90% of the time he's going to come down with it because of the fact that he's big and strong. Same with Williams, same with Watson, same with any of them, right? Yeah. And so it just makes it that much easier when you're trying to run your scheme and you've got guys that use their body to shield the ball. And like you said, on that touchdown catch, it looked like the DB posted. Totally. And if that's anybody else, like, say, all due respect, Fred Stamps, like a smaller guy, he probably does. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, exactly.
And so that Duke Williams hit.
That Duke Williams block. Oh, my goodness, where he sends the guy into another time zone. That was amazing.
And that's demoralizing, you get, and then especially if you lose in that way where you've been ahead. And then you lose on a play like that where you just get dominated. And
that was amazing. Mike Riley on that last drive. I mean, for the game, he ends up 27-37 for 350 and 3 TDs. Again, 4 games now, no interceptions.
That's incredible.
That's the stat right there. Because if he does throw an interception in this Hamilton game, they don't win.
Right. No, not at all.
The way things were going like that, they really had some breakdowns on special teams. They gave up the block. They gave up 2 blocks actually. Yeah, and you can't do that. You can't expect to win games. Right, giving up 2 blocks like that. You give one up for a touchdown.
And you gave one up for exactly.
You can't. It just doesn't happen. It's unheard of to give up 2 blocks like that and still win the game.
Then on our special teams, cover teams, I thought, did really well. And
Banks didn't do much.
Yeah, they contained him.
Banks didn't do much. Yeah. But Natea J had a game.
Speaking of physical
special
players.
Teams. 4 special teams tackles, but 2 of them where he just ran guys over that I didn't expect coming from
that's
him.
Why
it's
he's
awesome.
there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what, when you're talking about the culture, right? Mm-hmm. That's your role.
Right.
Like, if you're not getting at least 1 tackle a game, you're wasting space.
Yeah.
And that's the pressure that you have to perform under, right? And it's like people call it pressure, but it's just an expectation, right? And that's the culture that exists now. Like, when you win a Grey Cup, you realize what a sacrifice it is.
Yeah.
And all the extra work, all the extra film. And I know what a kind of coach Jason Moss is, and he does not play around. Like, when it's when it's time to practice, he's not going to suffer anybody screwing around and joking around and playing. It's not time for that. Even walkthroughs like boot camp.
Yeah.
For the mind, though, right? So,
Yeah.
And he'll have his quarterbacks and receivers stay out after the walkthrough's over to work on timing and all that. So he tries to maximize every minute that he has with those guys, and it's really starting to show off because let's think about it. Last year he was the offensive coordinator and the head coach. Now he's kind of handed over some of the play calling, but he's still probably the de facto coordinator. He's just got a guy kind of making the calls.
Right.
For him.
Yeah.
But they've got 2 years together.
Yeah.
Under the same system. And Riley's a smart guy, and you don't see a lot of hesitation now, and he's not, he's stepping into his throws. He's doing he's doing things that we haven't seen around here in a long time.
Yeah. And his leadership, too.
Yeah, that's the difference,
huge.
right? He's very confident. And I kind of hope he can carry it over. But the injuries are concerning, but, good teams find a way to play through it.
Yep.
Well, and in this game, we lost Blair Smith to a hand injury. We lost Brandon Thompson out.
And then
we're not
we lose
really
Peters
sure
for
why.
suspension.
And now we're going to lose Peters for
Kendall
suspension.
Lawrence.
Kendall Lawrence as well out. So it'll be interesting. I guess Chris Edwards. Is Chris Edwards?
Yep.
Yeah, that'll take over the return games.
Yep.
Let's talk about that for a second, Mike. I want to ask you first the Peters suspension, because we said at the time, it was going to be a suspension for sure.
Yes.
Lots of banter on Twitter, 1 game, 2 game, whatever, but it gets the
I
one game.
I don't think it was going to be 2 games. If you look
I thought it was going to be 1.
If you look at the Will Hill suspension, he grabbed the referee with both hands, and that's a very threatening move, and that's why he was kicked out of the game and got the 1 game.
Right.
I don't think that somebody swatting a referee on the back of the shoulder deserves more games than that.
Right.
So that's why I thought 1 game is when it's happened. Because Ambrosi has to say, you can't touch the referee. You can't contact them. Yeah. That is an automatic game suspension that went through. People have been talking about how he's going to appeal it. I don't know if you can.
Why
if
bother?
It is, why would you?
He can. The only benefit to that would be that he would play this weekend.
And then maybe the next
he would have
week,
to sit out the next game. So I don't even know.
Depending on how long the appeal process was, because Jerron Carter played for almost 2 months before he had his time to...
And he could. He could have grounds for... But I think that Ambrosi's better off being consistent and just being, no exceptions. Like, you can't. And they look at each incident and they look at it in its own context, but you can't be making contact with an official.
Right.
No. If it was incidental contact, that's one thing, but if you actually show aggression, then Randy has to make that call.
Last week, I want to talk a little bit about the defense in this. Ladler was all over the field, and when we watched that game together, you were saying Ladler's on an all-star pace.
He's easily the best player on the defense.
Reminded
me a lot of Singo and Mobley, the way his range, moving around the field, like he looked like he just was like his hair was on fire. Like he just was. He was the guy that and that's the other thing about the culture is like when the ball's in the air, make a play. Don't watch the game, make a play. Go where the ball is going to be. Don't sit back and watch. Like once the ball's thrown, like you need to take your aggressive, hard approach to the ball.
Right.
Like that's all like stuff you perfect in practice. Like you can't just show up and practice and dog it.
Yeah.
And then expect those things to happen in the game. You have to practice those things before they become second nature, right?
Yes.
And so I really saw that with him especially because like he was taking the right angle every time, and he was it was like he was seeing plays develop, and it was like it was fun to watch. It's going to be interesting to see how they, having talked about Ladler, I'm going to switch gears, but Peters, in my mind, I like him. I think he's a good DB, and I think they're going to have a hard time without him. I think he brings a lot of stability back there. Without him in there, it'll be interesting. I don't know how they're going to deal with that.
I wonder if Young's going to come back maybe. Or
possibly. Yeah.
Someone shift? We'll see.
Well, we will have to see. it would be totally remiss if we didn't say, Earthquake almost got his first sack.
Oh, so close.
Roughing the
Penalty.
passer on the low hit, but he'll get it this week. That's fine.
Yeah.
And, of course, Money White goes 1 for 1 on field goals. Now, we were talking about the 32-yard net on punts, and that might be why they signed Hugh O'Neill this week.
Right.
Yeah, just to try and help with...
White is easily one of the best, if not the best, place kickers in the CFO.
Absolutely.
But his punting, you kind of take what you can get with him. He has the ability to be quite good, but I just think that people don't understand how hard it is to do both. Mm-hmm. And we've been spoiled in the CFO because we've seen guys like Sean Fleming, and Fleming took a long time to get to the point where
we had Harper.
We had Glenn Harper on the roster for like 4 years when Fleming was here.
Yeah.
Paul McCallum, those guys, it's not easy to do both,
Yeah.
And I think Sean would be the first to tell you that punting's probably not his, best thing to do, right? Yeah. So I know Hugh really well. I recruited him coming out of Ross Shep. He was a linebacker. I recognized him again. He cut his hair, cut his beard. I didn't know him when he had the beard. I knew him better when he was a high school kid, clean shaven. But he's got a hell of a leg, and he can punt. Like he punts a lot like Lissick used to, with the really really high hang time and goes for a long distance.
Yeah.
I think that Hugh does things that Sean can't, while Sean can do things that Hugh can't. Hugh's a guy that's a little bit more of a liability when you're place kicking because you never kind of know what he's thinking about.
Right.
And sometimes he gets the yips, right? And you don't want to get the yips when you're going for game winner, right?
Yeah,
Sean
no
White's
kidding.
one of those guys that you don't have to worry about that, for the most part. 99% of the time, Sean's not getting the yips.
Yeah,
right?
no, it's going right where it needs to.
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. So, I totally understand that move. And now with all the injuries, you kind of have to look and see where you're going to put an extra American and maybe dedicate one of those roster spots, one of those Canadians, to maybe have it be you.
Yeah. It's
be the punter.
entirely true. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, the nice thing is they don't ask how, they just ask how many.
Yep.
So now where they do ask how is how the empire was built. So let's go to the Esks history segment for this week and find out more about that.
Let's hear you cheer and holler for a mighty famous team. Let's hear you roar, what for a team that's on repeat. Our voices rise up to the skies, the fans are glad to scream. We love those Eskimos.
Welcome to This Week in Eskimos History. With this being episode 98 of the Eskimo Empire podcast, we wanted to take a moment to look at the man who won number 98 in the recent Esks by the Numbers, Rollie Miles. Born Roland Elmer Miles in Washington, D.C. on February 16, 1927, Rollie Miles was a star athlete during a time of racial unrest in the United States. He excelled at track and field, baseball, and of course football while attending St. Augustine's College in North Carolina. After college, he attended spring training for the Boston Red Sox baseball team before coming to Canada and signing with the Regina Caps as a second baseman in May of 1951. Eskimos coach Anis Stukas saw Miles playing baseball at a tournament in Edmonton, and after learning about his football playing in college, brought him in for a trial and signed him immediately on August 7th of that year. Miles started halfback for the Green and Gold, but also was the team's punter, kick returner, and an all-star defensive back and outside linebacker. Miles' mastery of the option play allowed him to either run the ball or pass with deadly accuracy, and he threw the first touchdown pass of the 1954 Grey Cup from the halfback position. He was tapped to become the quarterback on August 23, 1954, after all three Eskimo QBs were down with injury, becoming a one-man wrecking crew and surpassing opposing quarterback Jack Jacobs at the position. Rollie was one of the most athletic players of the Eskimos during his 11 years with the team between 1951 and 1961, and was a Western Interprovincial Football Union All-Star 8 times during that span, 3 on offense at halfback, 3 times at defensive back, and twice at linebacker, along with being named the Eskimos' most outstanding player 3 times from 1951 to 1953. Rollie Miles joined the team during a period where professional football in Canada was integrating for the first time, especially in the West. Regina was slow to allow black players on the team, so the Eskimos, who had signed halfback and kick returner Jim Chambers as their first African-American player in early June of 1951, showed that Edmonton was serious about bringing people of color into Canadian football. While Canada was ahead of the United States in civil rights, there were still many long-held prejudices alive north of the 49th parallel, And while many believed Rolly Miles was the easy choice for the inaugural Most Outstanding Player Award in 1953, the title was instead awarded to his teammate, Billy Vessels, a white halfback from Oklahoma. Vessels' own acceptance speech said that he believed himself that Miles had earned the award more than him, and he would consider it Miles' award as much as his own. Rolly Miles was an outspoken proponent of civil rights his entire life, and often was the most vocal about inequalities that still existed in Edmonton and throughout Canada, championing them for others even when his football status allowed him more privilege than those African Americans who were not as high profile. Miles' outspoken nature and tenacity is why many believe he was not admitted into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame until 12 years after his first eligibility, though his play and statistics more than qualified him as a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Miles completed his Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Alberta during his time playing with the Eskimos, and worked with the Edmonton Catholic School Board, teaching and coaching at high schools in the city after retiring from playing in 1961. He settled in the city with his wife, Dr. Marianne Miles, and their 7 children, where he remained until he passed away in 1995, leaving a legacy behind including membership in the Canadian Football Hall of Fame, the Alberta Sports Hall of Fame, and was enshrined in the Eskimos' Wall of Honor with his 3 teammates, Johnny Bright, Normie Kwong, and Jackie Parker. Rolly Miles Athletic Field was named in his honor, introducing new generations of fans to this Eskimo great. Thank you again for listening to another episode of This Week in Eskimos History. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Esks History, or find us on Facebook under This Day in Esks History. Until next week, fight on Eskimos.
Going for a touchdown. Going for a touchdown. Going for a touchdown. We love those Eskimos.
That was wonderful, super fan, as always. Our Esks notes for this week, the 50-50 was claimed last week by Quentin and Samantha Eberts, and as it turns out, they will be our guests on episode 99.
Can I just say, go on record and say how happy I am that season ticket holders won it?
Yes.
100% agree.
I love the fact that they do the 50-50, but it just kind of gets on my nerves when somebody comes in off the street that never goes to the games normally and doesn't bleed the traditional green and gold and have season tickets to win that. For them to win it, to have had the season tickets, it's just gratifying to see, and I just love it. And I hope you tell them how happy and how pleased a lot of us alumni were that they won it.
Awesome.
I will, but yeah. I'm just excited because they're fans first, right? And then there's the 50-50. This is going to be a great story. So I'm excited.
I like the fact that so many things benefited from that. The football teams and the junior teams too. And minor football. So
yeah, it's fantastic. Now we already talked Esks signing Hugh O'Neill,
right?
But they did also sign linebacker Antonio Longino.
I would say that's a pretty good guess.
I'm going to go with that. Yeah, sure. Let's face it, we're running out of linebackers. It's good to sign one of those.
This is an international, though.
Yes, exactly. So, you got to start turning a few people around, I think, at some point. So we're going to have to see how that plays out. I think that's it for Esks Notes, so let's get to our Empire Points update. Yeah. So Joe Balaneski still in first, Chris Curtis, Coach Vic, Joe Pritchard, Karen K still in the top 5, and Shelley R is up in the top 5. Again, top 10 is how you get into the draw for the jersey and the helmet. Gain Empire Points by sharing the show, making us laugh, doing all those fun things.
Make a video.
We're going to talk about that in just a moment. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with our scores from around the league, the game preview for BC, and this week's Pick'em.
Hi, this is Tom Richards, and you're listening to the Eskimo Empire Podcast.
The Eskimo Empire Podcast is brought to you by Provincial Sleep Group. Do you snore? Are you tired during the day? Check out the website at psgi.ca. Take the quick sleep quiz and see if you need a free sleep study. Provincial Sleep Group, helping the Empire get a better night's sleep. Hey guys, do you know there's even more ways to interact with the Empire online?
What?
That's right, you can find us on Twitter at EskEmpirePod, on Facebook under the Eskimo Empire Podcast group, on Instagram at EskEmpirePod, and you can also follow us on YouTube under our channel, the Eskimo Empire Podcast. Now, I know you guys like that Eskimo history segment, right?
Yeah!
You can follow more of that information at Esks History on Twitter, and you can find it on This Day in Esks History on Facebook. Don't forget to share, okay?
Okay!
Thanks so much for listening. Let's get back to the show. Patreon, patreon.com/EskEmpirePod. There we go. Shout out to our Hall of Famers, Joe, Jedi, Hippie, Brazilian Ty, and Bill. Thanks for helping the show out.
We definitely appreciate the support. It's easy to be a part of it. It is just a couple of dollars a month and up, and that can help out the show quite a bit.
Absolutely. And with Empire Points starting to kind of get going here, for the next 3 weeks, we are gearing up for episode 100.
We are.
So to do that, we're going to have a little fun with the Patreon song. Post a video of you singing the Patreon song that you just heard, and tag us in it, and we will throw you 100 Empire Points.
Oh, that can build up pretty quick.
Won't it? Exactly. I'm excited to see the different renditions.
Oh, I can't wait.
Oh, it's going to be a blast. Yeah. So like I said, that's going to stay open right until August 14th. That is when we will be recording episode 100.
That's right.
So, now, the Joe Adarius for Autism Watch is still on, as he decided he's going to take Bryant Mitchell's yards and touchdowns while Adarius is out.
Yes.
So that is now up to $25.90. And
awesome.
All through the season, that is 10 cents for every yard and $1 for every touchdown.
Yeah.
So if you want to join in, we'll continue to update that as the season goes on. Let's get into our out-of-town scoreboard, Superfan. Brought to you, of course, by SeatGiant.ca, where they have tickets for all CFL games and all in Canadian dollars. Plus, they have concerts, theater, and event tickets, too. Use the code to get a discount and help out the show. I love that makes you laugh. That's fantastic.
I love it.
All right, Superfan, take us around the league with all of our games.
All right, so we started off again. Ottawa had a couple of games this week, so they kicked it off 24 over Montreal 19.
Yes, and that was an interesting one. It was crazy close even in the last drive.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
A great big stop on 3rd and 1.
Yes.
It was very, very... I was just listening to that one, but it sounded like just an amazing game. And we knew Ottawa wasn't going to go winless forever.
But you know what? When you watch those teams out east, like watching your two little brothers fight.
It's kind of true.
We quiet down back there.
Yes, you're fine. You're fine.
You'll be all right.
It's all so cute. Next up, we went off to BC versus Winnipeg. BC took this one, another crazy one, 45-42.
That game had everything.
Yeah.
Defied logic, yeah.
I thought...
What all the special teams gimmicks that Winnipeg threw in there.
No kidding.
Crazy. Yeah. Now, what do they call that? The sneaky play or something?
That was the sleeper play.
Well,
Sleeper
former
play.
Eskimo, Mike Miller, got that.
I know.
Great play. Like, that's a Mike O'Shea thing. I guarantee you. He
totally.
said it there because he was quite the special teamer in his day. So,
and what a lot of people are saying, hey, the sleeper play is illegal, but the sleeper play is only illegal on offense.
Yeah.
There was a loophole that it's legal on special teams, and they took advantage of that. So
Man,
good for them.
That was really, really amazing.
Yeah.
I was very, very impressed with, but just the whole back and forth of that game was amazing. And of course, Lule shoots the lights out again, and I'm like, I'm so glad I picked him in fantasy. We'll talk about that soon too. Isn't that exciting?
Sure will.
Exactly. All right, next up.
Moving on, we had a game that seemed like it was a little close at one point, but you just knew it was going to happen. Calgary was going to take this one over Saskatchewan, 27-10. Interesting to watch this one for the interplay between Charleston Hughes and Derek Dennis.
Yeah, well, and Charleston Hughes had a game.
Yeah, you know what? It's... Hughes should have had 7 sacks.
Probably.
And he was credited with, I think, 3.
3,
but
yes.
he could have easily had 7. The thing about Saskatchewan is it's a timing offense, right? And Glenn likes the timing, 1, 2, 3, boom, 1, 2, 3, and he didn't have time.
Right.
It was 1, 2,
Yeah, it was 1, 2, look out, boom. So it was, and Dennis was their big off-signing season.
Yeah.
Off-season signing. I just said that backwards.
That's all right.
Anyway, too many hits to the head. But he was their guy. He was the guy they were going to build their O-line around.
Yeah.
And that was their sort of their way of sort of remediating the line. But he just was not there. Like, his feet were all over the place. He couldn't get set. And I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Like, that whole, I don't understand the whole, why would you poke the bear?
Yeah.
There's just nothing to be gained by that. Like, you know what? Somebody asks you a question. Yeah, we'll see what happens on the field. Leave it at that.
Leave it at
you know
that.
what I mean?
Yep.
I've always been a big believer in that. You know, like there's no thing to be gained by that.
Yeah, and then
Dennis got what he deserved.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, exactly.
All right, and then the last game we had Toronto versus the second appearance of Ottawa. So those of us in fantasy that tried to double up on Ottawa, that worked out. It's all right for some of them, but Toronto, and of course, took this one at the last moment, 27-24.
Yeah, and that was a pretty cool game just to watch at the end there, because at the beginning it was like all Toronto, and then it kind of got a little exciting in the last quarter.
I just was yelling at them to keep it down out there, man. Like, your brother said, listen, he's your brother. Stop hitting him, all right?
It's your brother. Stop hitting him. He's not touching me. He's not touching me.
I don't care who's touching who. It's got to stop.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, just got to stop. It's all fine. Yeah.
Okay, Toronto, you win.
I would say it's all fun and games till somebody gets poked in the eye, but that's what happened to Harris. Anyway, he was all right. He got back up and played. So great for us, because that's what we picked. So that's the exciting part.
We got some streaks going in Pick'em.
We sure do. Yes. Well, we'll get to Pick'em in a second. Let's talk about our game this week. Back home, a huge West Division matchup against BC.
And Sean Paul
at halftime, which just got announced. Oh my goodness.
I just feel so bad for Mike.
I know. I'll be sitting there with my records.
When Mike came walking up to the house when he was crip walking, he was all, and then you said Sean Paul's coming. He's like, what? I'm not going to be here.
Then I had the little sad Charlie Brown kind of walk after.
It's like Lucy pulled the football away. Does that make me Lucy? Wait a minute.
Yes, it does make you Lucy.
Okay, perfect. Well, I guess I'll live with that. That's great. Now, 7:30 game. We have obviously a big halftime show, but more importantly in this game, this is going to be a huge challenge for this team with the number of injuries that we're dealing with, the injuries that BC is dealing with in their secondary, and of course to their quarterback. We're not entirely sure. I last I heard was Lule was going to be starting this game again. So let's start with you, Jed. What would you say is your kind of keys to the game for the Eskimos?
You know what? I don't know what their plan is going forward as far as their defensive backfield and how that will affect, because that unit more than any other on the defense. You know, when you have like people going in and out, that unit tends to suffer, right? Because those guys all have to be on the same page. Like the safety has to be playing and coordinating with the halfbacks, and they have to have that sort of unspoken sort of, you're here, you're there. When you're bringing a guy in off the bench who hasn't been repping, it can really be disruptive.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how that. But I had said the same thing last week. About Hamilton and Edmonton, and I actually had called for Hamilton to win that game, and they almost did. So
almost close. Yeah.
You know, when you keep losing guys like, you know, Bowman, and you know, it catches up to you eventually. Hopefully, it won't catch up to them this week. I think they benefit from being at home, and I think that Edmonton at home is a different team. And I think that I think on paper they can do it. It's just a matter of everybody being on the same page and everybody getting in the film room. And if the culture is strong enough, they'll transcend it. You know, and that's the big thing. Like, when you talk about culture, you're talking about the older guys taking the younger guys under their wing and saying, okay, so this is how we normally do it. You need to be in there, and we need to make sure you're doing it the same way Peters does it, or the same way, you know.
Yeah, that's very true.
You know what I mean?
It can be a huge part of it.
So I think that they can, they have all the tools to be 5-0. I have a feeling it's going to be a high-scoring game. So,
I am feeling much the same way. Yes,
as long as we're higher scoring.
Yeah,
for me,
here's the other thing: if they can do something about the punting.
Yeah,
because a lot of people don't realize what an impact that has. I know, for example, when you guys were in the alumni room, I was like, man, they keep lining. Like, there was such a short field. For them the whole game.
For Ottawa, the whole game.
And it was like we were handing it to them. You know, so if you get a punter in there that can pin them back and make them work with the long field. Lule is really good at taking what you give him. You know.
Yeah.
I don't think Harris has gotten to the level where he's able to do that, but Lule will certainly do that. So
you don't want to give him any shorter field.
Give me the wide side out. I'm going to throw the wide side out. Right?
Yeah, so, exactly.
He's not going to force anything. So if you're going to be, if they can get some sort of, if they put O'Neill in there and they're punting, that actually changes things for me too, because that helps the defense out, right? If you don't do that, if you don't make that, because that's an extra 15 yards.
Could be, yeah.
Just
yeah.
in distance
Yeah.
alone. I'm not talking about the net. Because if
Yes.
you get 15 yards more in distance, your net automatically goes up, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
instead of 32, we're talking about 41. Right?
Yeah, that's a big difference.
I would look for that. If something happens with the punting, if they do something, because what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to look at their roster and go, where are we going to put this Canadian in?
Yep.
Do we start a Canadian defensive end?
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm thinking. If I'm looking at the roster, I'm going, where am I going to put my Canadian? I'm going to put Boateng in there.
Yeah.
Because he's ready. He's ready. And
Yeah.
we don't get much between him and Marcus. I don't think there's a lot of drop off right now. I think he's actually Boateng surprised the hell out of me.
Oh, yeah. He's
actually quite
played
good.
amazing.
And he has the ability, I think, just go ahead and put him in there, you know, or
Wow.
you know what I mean? So
We're okay with this.
we are.
All right, Superfan, your keys to the game?
For me, I want to see the defensive line get as much pressure as they can. We've had a lot of quarterback pressures this season. Odell's been on fire since they've been recording these quarterback pressures. The more pressure they can get, the easier the job the defensive backs have.
Yeah.
So I think and the front seven in general with those linebackers as well, or I guess 6 if we have a nickelback. But
Yeah.
if we can get a lot of pressure on that offensive line, get to the quarterback early, make him make those throws before he's ready, that's just going to help out the entire defense.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I think another thing is that we got to take advantage of the fact that BC's secondary is beat up as well.
Yeah.
So as much as I think we need to balance and have some Trayvon Van in there. I mean, Elamimian is going to be watching Van very closely.
Yep.
So let's a little bit of balance, but we got to take advantage. We got Riley, who's been on fire as of late. We got to take some of that advantage downfield, and some of these guys that they haven't seen with Bryant Mitchell.
Yeah.
And they've only seen a little bit of Duke Williams and those types of things. He did well in the first game. Maybe we can capitalize on that again. So
Yeah, I wonder with Elamimian being such a big hitter, it would be interesting to see Dupuis get a few balls got in his way.
Ooh.
A 250-pound fullback coming in Elamimian's very different than a 160, 170-pound halfback.
very true. Okay, so out of everybody on the field, who are you watching this game? We'll start with you, Superfan.
Oh, I think I'm going to be watching whoever is in for Brandon Thompson in that spot. That's been a really key position for that defensive secondary. I'm wondering if it's going to be maybe Marcel Young. We remember seeing him, or who I thought was him.
If I'm the coordinator, that's who I put in.
Yeah, someone with a lot of experience, especially against an experienced quarterback like Lule. So I'd like to see how that comes in on that boundary side.
Okay. Jed, who are you watching?
Whoever's punting.
Okay.
Because it's the bane of the Eskimos' existence right now.
Yeah.
Not getting the production out of that.
Sure.
And, I love White. White's one of the funniest guys I've ever met. And he's a hell of a place kicker, one of the best I've ever seen. But punting has to pick it up. And we're not. Punting right now is way below what it should be. We should be netting 41 yards, 42 yards to be successful. We can't be netting 32, 31. That's not going to win games.
Right.
You know, we're winning games in spite of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
That only
it's
lasts
not going
for
to
so
last
long. Yeah,
especially with the injuries that we're getting.
Yeah.
And the defense needs all the help they can get with all the injuries and stuff. So
Yeah, 100% agree.
The punting's good this game. We got a good shot.
All right. I am going to be watching going the kind of flip side from you. I'm watching the kick return game because now with Kendall Lawrence out, if Edwards is taking over that position, we need somebody who can run north and south.
Yeah.
We
I thought he
need
had some
to be
success.
We need, he did. He had some, and having a whole week of repping hopefully will help. But we need to get up that field. That's gonna, and we need to be starting outside of the shadows of our goalposts.
Yes,
I think
please.
that's going to be a huge part of this game to maximize that. All right, so now our pick'em. You can join our group with the link that we post. Leaders this week are Barry Titus, T. Lee moved up into second, Hugo Gogo in 3, Superfan Mike up in 4th,
Nice.
Cappy D into 5th, and I am in 40th. All right, so
going for 39.
Don't pick what I pick. All right, let's start with our game. Our first game is Montreal out visiting in Winnipeg. So, Superfan, who you got in this one?
I think Winnipeg has been certainly a lot more creative this year. Jed brought it up with Mike O'Shea. Is just pulling out all kinds of stops that people haven't seen before and exploiting some of these loopholes and these obscure rules people don't know about. And it really confuses the other team. I thought it was a great game against BC, and I look for them to come on top this week.
I think that Winnipeg's a little bit bigger than Montreal. Sure. So as far as the little brothers go, I'm going to go with the bigger little brother. So.
I like the way you're doing this. This is good. Yeah, I was going to pick Winnipeg mostly just because they're at home, and I think they're still sore out of the 42 points on the board and still lose the game.
Yep.
So I can see Winnipeg racking up some points. Although I don't see this as a high scoring affair, only because Montreal's defense is their strength.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I do think that Winnipeg pulls that one out. Next one would actually be our game, but we'll skip over that for a second, and we'll go to Toronto versus Saskatchewan in Saskatchewan. So, Jed, who do you have in that one?
I'm going to say Saskatchewan.
Okay.
Yeah, because the pressure is mounting, and they've got expectations in the new barn. They've got their guys are playing for their jobs now, and Jones isn't going to really last much longer. I think if he keeps, if he loses a few more games, it might be calling Ed.
Okay, yeah.
Don't go there.
Oh my, that would be not good. Okay, well, I can't disagree with you. I'm picking Saskatchewan in this game too. I think their back is up against the wall. They are playing at home, and Toronto, although has had success in the East, I don't think they're having the same success in the West. No. So I will give Saskatchewan this one. Super pen.
This one I've been sort of going back and forth. Toronto is one of those teams that's I think the hardest to predict this year.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
Refer to them as stupid Toronto.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very hard.
Like Jed said, there's a lot of pressure going on in Saskatchewan. It's at home. If this is in Toronto, I'd probably pick them, but it's in Saskatchewan. I'll go with the Riders.
All right. Which is weird. We all picked the wrong shade of green.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Hamilton versus Calgary in Calgary. That'll be Calgary. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's nothing more you can say.
That one could get ugly.
Oh,
it might.
It's now, Calgary. Of course,
the interesting thing is, I'll be curious to see if Hamilton brings that same fierce kind of play that they brought against us. Yeah. That one could get into some massive.
Yeah, but Hamilton at home and Hamilton on the road are two different things.
True.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, very true. All right, so I guess we're all picking Calgary there. Yes. All right, last game that we're going to pick, of course, is our beloved Eskimos at home versus the BC Lions on Friday night. Superfan, you get to pick first.
Man, I didn't want to do this one.
Yeah, I know.
This is going to be such a tough game. Obviously, believe in Mike Riley on down. He instills this culture of winning that Ed Hervey really brought back the team in 2013, getting Mike Riley in here and making us believe we can all win. Mm-hmm. And I think that they are going to be close, but I'm actually going with BC in this game.
All right.
Mostly because I'm not there.
Okay.
And Sean Paul
That must be it. That must be it. All right, Jed.
I feel like I'm voting blind because I don't know what they're going to do positionally.
Fair enough.
Now and then, I mean, Peters could appeal the suspension, and he could end up, I don't know how that's going to play out. But having said that, I think that Riley's on a roll, and I think that the fact that BC's secondary is also suspect, and I had forgotten about Marcel Young. I know Marcel's taken his lumps in the preseason, but he is very experienced, and I think that against all expectations, and personally, I wasn't a big fan of the secondary last year, and this year they've actually played pretty well.
Yeah,
and the 40 front is showing signs of dominating at times, especially when they pin their ears back. I don't know why, but for some reason, I think they're going to win. I think the Eskimos are at home, or like I said, Eskimos at home are different. They're that much better. I think at home, the home field in Edmonton is good for 14 points. It's just, but some things have to happen. For that to be a reality. So I'm tentatively saying, I'll go out on a limb and say I think Edmonton will win just because of the way the offense showed up and how they're just different guys keep filling in every week, and it's pretty fun to watch. So I think they'll do the same thing Friday.
You know what? This is I think most people will have the hardest time picking this game this whole week. I think it's definitely going to be a very hard one to pick. But I think even across the league, people are going to have a hard time picking this game. I'm going with you, Jed. My gut is telling me that this team is on a roll, and they are finding ways to overcome all of these injuries and things. And also, I'm obviously a bit of a fan, so I'm going to say at home that the Eskimos pull this out and make that night absolutely awesome for me on a lot of levels.
Fantastic.
So go Esco.
I'm only concerned that we beat BC in Vancouver, and they've got a real score to settle. So
sure. And you know what? Your pick'em has been much better than mine, but my gut is telling me that the Eskimos
I win either way this way. It's great.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I did think about doing that just for that reason. All right. Well, join our fantasy league as well. I had a decent week. Not too bad. So in that league right now, our leader is N Hodge. DK_22 is in second, and Empire Andrew up into third.
I demand a recount.
Week. Yes, that's kind of shocking. Big jump for me, but make sure you join the Eskimo Empire Pod League, of course, or join the Canadian Football Pod Network against all of your favorite podcasters. Thanks, boys, for coming in again. This was amazing. Jed, we love having you here for the stories. These are so great. Yeah. Where does everybody find you on social media and all that other fun stuff?
I'm on Facebook. You can help me up. If you don't look too creepy, I'll add you.
That was your problem.
I just
Instagram,
snuck in there.
Jed Rock. I'm on Twitter, JedRock43.
Awesome.
So,
fantastic. Thank you as always. Super fan.
You find me at 56 Parkies and then the history at Esks History.
Yeah, it's a hard one. Yeah.
It is.
You can find us, of course, at Esk Empire Pod and me at Freepalicious. Thank you again for downloading, as without you, there is no Empire. And thanks again to Provincial Sleep Group for sponsoring this episode. Check out their new Facebook page for more sleep information and the website psgi.ca for the quick sleep quiz. Easy for me to say.
It is.
Show is back in 2 weeks as we are taking our bye week next week. We are going to be joined by 50-50 winners Quentin and Samantha Eberts, as I said. Make sure you come down to the tailgate on Friday. It will be a little less extensive than normal as Mike is out of town, but I will be hanging out there with my lovely wife, and we will visit for a bit. And of course, you can get your pre-orders in there for your Kwaku t-shirts. Only $15 for a dry fit shirt. So bring that on down. We'll mark you in, and we're taking pre-orders until August the 7th, and the order will go in on the 8th, and we will make sure that everybody gets their shirts. So speaking of, is it time for Kwaku to get that first sack? Absolutely.
Yes.
Will Riley continue to spread the ball and get more points on the board? Absolutely. And are we ready to take the season series on the Lions and move to 5-0? Absolutely. For Jed and Superfan Mike, I'm Andrew. Remember, you can't catch footballs with your face. We will absolutely talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.